well.
How are you, Nick? Hi.
Didn't shave.
Oh, that's okay.
Looking good there, Brian.
Oh, I didn't even notice that, Brian.
Yeah, I'm
Wow,
looking,
okay.
looking a lot older.
A lot older.
Brian, you're turning back into a hippie, I'm telling you.
I haven't been that way since, I was 35 or so.
Are you going to let Kathy trim your hair when you're ready?
She is going to be here soon. I think I know where she's
No, I was
at.
saying, is she going to trim your hair when you're ready?
Oh.
Yeah, she has to, re-dye it so I kind of look younger. Then I'll shave again.
Lou hasn't given me the A-OK yet to do the trimming.
Oh, he hasn't. Oh, okay.
Nope,
You got,
nope.
good arms. And
Yes, hey, I think
you don't have a hand that shakes like this.
Oh,
Let me find out where she's at.
okay.
Looks like Sue is joining. I don't know if she can hear us yet.
You can sit on the bed here.
And Nick, we are recording this and we can share it with the group, so you'll be able to see whatever you might have missed when you get off the line at 6.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
Share it with any members that aren't able to join us.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll send up a follow-up email afterwards with a link. So hopefully that'll be helpful to all. Although I did realize today, I found out we had a couple of, and there's Chris Gioni. Thank you, Chris, for joining us. Is that Morgan Hill behind you? He's got his mute button on.
Yeah, you're muted there, Chris.
Up in Knob Hill.
Halfway up El Toro.
That's
El
awesome.
Toro. Nice.
I guess I haven't figured out how to do that yet.
So
You got to find a picture.
yeah, so you can upload any picture. It has a few template ones, but next to the video button where you can start stop your video, there should be a up
Oh, you said that.
and you can click on that and then you can choose virtual background.
Ah,
Okay,
cool.
all right. So we've got Harjot there. We've got Rick Kent jumping on.
Come in a little closer. So you can see.
We still got a minute or two before.
Kathy's here, but she's
There's
hiding.
Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Hello. Oh, there's
Hi,
Nancy. Hello, Nancy. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
We're just kind of letting everybody get on the call. We still got another minute or two to see who can join us.
Sue's here.
Hi, Sue. Can you hear
Hi,
us
guys.
okay?
Yes, I can.
Good. Okay. Thank you so much. Welcome. So my time is saying 5:30, but if you don't mind, maybe we'll just wait another minute and just see if a couple more people join on, because there's a few people who had suggested they would be on the call and I'm not seeing them yet. So
No worries.
okay. And just for anyone who did not hear, we are recording this. And so we'll be able to share out a link after the fact. And so then anyone who maybe has to join in late or leave early, you'll get to have access to the whole thing. Oh, there's Jody. Okay, awesome. Welcome, Jody. Oh, there's Caitlin. Welcome, Caitlin. I'm going to have to expand my screen a bit to make sure I can see everybody. Okay. You know what? I'm going to say let's go ahead and get started. There is no formal agenda for today. The idea was just to connect with as many of you as were willing to participate. and just kind of, touch base. One, make sure people are okay. Our world has changed a lot here in the last month or so. And so you guys have spent a lot of time with us, invested a lot of your time, your effort over the past 9 months or so. Gosh, I guess actually it's getting closer to a year. So we just, wanted to touch base and also kind of just chat a little about how much things have changed also for the city in a very quick amount of time. Kind of prior to the recommended budget going out this Friday and the things that'll be coming up. So maybe I can ask Michelle what the easiest way would be for people to kind of pop in and share their thoughts.
So most of you, I'm not sure how many people, but probably all getting really experienced with Zoom at this point, but there is a more button on the bottom with 3 dots. And if you click on that, you should see a raise your hand icon. That's probably the most orderly way for people. And I can just go ahead and call on each person who raises their hand. Alternatively, what Christina does, and it works well, is she asks everybody to mute their mics. And when you're ready to speak, you just unmute your mic. And so Maureen, you can pull up on the bottom, you can see manage participants. Should see something like that. And you can see a list of the people who are on the call.
Yep.
To run it that way, you can just ask people if they're ready to speak to unmute their mics. That might be a simple way for folks.
Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? Michelle is becoming our most expert teammate at managing these Zoom meetings. So anyway, I'm not seeing anybody's mics unmuted. Is there anyone who wanted to? I know Nick has to leave early. Nick, do you mind if I pick on you and maybe you could start things off?
No, not a problem. Yeah, boy, that's a pretty open-ended question, though, I have to say. So, I mean, at some level, from both from a family and a business perspective, things have completely changed in a heartbeat, right? And I almost see myself as a Disney reimagineer, trying to kind of think through not only how to quickly respond to both family needs and business needs, but then quickly transition to how do I stabilize the current environment, and then how can I renew myself as far as what we're doing as far as moving forward, both on a personal and a business perspective. So it probably has been one of the most difficult periods of time, I think personally, for our family that we've seen and experienced. And I'm sure I'm no different than everybody else on this phone and others that aren't able to join us. The businesses at this point, and I've been blessed, obviously, to have a couple of businesses under my belt for some time, along with Craft Roots in the restaurant, but also with my consulting business on the healthcare side. It's really been a struggle to maintain just the human aspects of relationships, to keep people whole, and then to maintain a presence of how to move forward with this, which also then implies that the businesses as I stand today are fragile. And the uncertainty of what may be coming down the road, even in the near future, and we're thinking more on a week-by-week basis, is really determined based on the new information we receive every morning, how we react to that, and then really how do we put things in motion that can make us feel better at the end of the day. So I think it's an emotional toll. It's certainly a financial struggle on figuring out how to be stable through the next several months. But having said that, there's also a tremendous amount of beauty that's happened because of the moment of urgency. And if I look at the opportunities I've had over the past even several weeks to work with great people, many on this phone, to take a look at how we contribute to other lives in our community, that's what's allowed me, to be honest with you, to feel enriched and to feel comfortable that I can get up every morning and have a positive impact on what I'm doing. So that's a tough question to answer, but completely, it's a complete spin of the turntable over the last really 6 to 8 weeks. And we'll see kind of what happens tomorrow, and we just stay positive, and we just continue to push forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nick, thank you so much. That was a very heartfelt opening. I really appreciate your honesty and sincerity. And I think you're probably right. Each of us are experiencing different levels of that in different ways, depending on our own circumstances. But thank you. And then since you're on this call, I'm making an assumption that you're interested in continuing with this, or is that a wrong assumption?
No, of course. We have great work ahead of us, and now it becomes a little bit more. There's more complexity, and there's more dire need to actually look through from a strategic perspective the right paths forward, and then how to actually implement them. So I'm fully on board. This is a great team to work with, and I'm positive we can come up with some solutions.
Okay, thanks so much, Nick. All right, I see Susan, you look unmuted. Sue, I don't know if you meant to be unmuted, but you are. Are you willing to jump in next?
I'm unmuted because I have a phone. It's impossible to get an IT person
Okay.
over the last month. And so I have a partially installed computer that gives me your beautiful face and the faces of other people, but no sound. So
Okay.
I'm on the phone.
Okay. Did you have anything to say though?
Well, what I will say is I do want to move forward. I think we have probably increased criticality in what we're doing or what we've been trying to do for the last, well, since June when we started. And I think the city's needs have changed. I read with a great deal of interest what Jody sent today, and I will be looking at those sites as well, because any insight that we can get that helps us approach this, I won't say it's insurmountable because I like Nick's positive attitude, but right now it looks like El Toro times 10 in front of us. So, but we'll get there. So thank you for continuing.
Okay, thank you so much, Sue. Caitlin, I see you raising your hand.
Hi, I don't know how to do it virtually.
That's
I've
okay.
been on so many Zoom calls. I can clap. That I figured out how to do, but for some reason I can't figure out how to raise my hand. I also probably need to jump off early depending on how long we're on. And that brings me to my biggest challenge, which is that I still have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old who are need constant. Oh, hi, Kat. I see Kathy's face in the corner. Hi, Kat. Who just need me 24 hours a day. On top of all of the other considerations. You know, my family is first, but also owning a business, our employees are in the forefront of my mind all the time. And I'm very concerned about all of our small businesses in Morgan Hill and how the small businesses impact Morgan Hill. I feel like I've been walking around for over a year with sort of the weight of how are we going to deal with this budget deficit kind of on my shoulders, and constantly thinking about it and in communication with my friends here about it. And now we don't even know how large the challenge is going to be because we don't know fully what the impact will be, but we know that the impact will be larger than we anticipated. But we also know that our audience has changed as well. And I'm very aware that everybody's circumstance is incredibly different. And it's something I think that we need to be very mindful of. We have people who are very lonely and very isolated. And that's something that just I have been aware of as I've been talking to community members. There are people who are prominent in our community that don't have any family, that live alone. And their experience is 180 different from what mine is.
I'm one of them
right now. Yeah. So where you, Maureen, are probably craving human contact, I'm at a contact overload. I think that it's really important for us to recognize that for the first time ever, I think everybody is going through something really hard, but we're not all going through the same hard thing. Depending on what your financial situation is, depending on what your family situation is, depending on what your job situation is, depending on your housing, your food, it's all a very different situation. And so it makes planning difficult, makes conversations like this difficult.
Yep.
And my dad always says that the worst place to be in is to have a lot of responsibility with no control, because control is the thing that helps us put our stressors at bay and plan for the future. And all of us, no matter what our situation, we're all under an immense amount of pressure because we all have a lot of responsibility in our lives and our community with no control over what happens. So
Yep.
My heart's with everybody.
Okay. And Caitlin, I'm going to just pose the same question to everybody. Are you someone who thinks that you'll be able to continue with us, or at this point with the way things are you starting to feel like maybe not?
No, I mean, absolutely. I think that I don't really feel like I have much of a choice, because I feel like the situation ahead of us is so important and so dire. I am homeschooling and caring for 2 children and running a business, so my time constraints are different than even what they used to be before. I can only get away for 20 minutes at a time as of right now, but I'm not planning on emotionally disengaging from the work.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Brian is waving his hand.
So I have, you know, a perspective in 2 different ends of it. One, I'm in the insurance business, and I've had clients go out of business and shut down. That means their employees don't have benefits, which is one aspect of it, plus they don't have income. On the other side, I talked to one of my good friends who's a strong competitor of mine about an hour ago. He called me and said, hey, I had one of my clients that got a loan through for $750,000, and he already got the money. So from that aspect, it's going to help that particular business stay in business. And so the loans are coming through pretty quick. But I talked to somebody else earlier today, somebody here in town that owns a restaurant, and they said that they went to their bank, and their bank wasn't accepting, you know, anything else as far as the PPP or the other loans that are available right now, because they're overloaded and they don't have the cash backup. So it's a dichotomy, I think, for the small business people, both in town here and throughout the state and throughout the nation. And I just think that, unfortunately, we haven't seen the worst of it yet. I think we're going to see in the next couple of weeks even more people that are going to be unemployed. And the unemployed number is going to go from 17 million to somewhere over 25, maybe even as high as 30 million in the next month. And that's going to be devastating to not only the city, the employees in the city, everybody that's involved in any way, shape, or form that's living in the United States.
Yeah.
We will come out of it, but it's going to take a while. And I know that the government's working on another draft right now of trying to get more money pushed out there. And that'll be coming in the next few days, if not definitely within a week. But I'm not sure that even that's going to help in the short term. But we'll get through it. We have to work together to get through it. We have to work through the budget in the city here, as well as everybody else is working through their budgets. So somehow or other, we'll work through it together. And that's what we have to do. We have to work together. We have to form that relationship and get through it. Make those tough decisions, because there are going to be some tough decisions that have to be made. And then we're going to have to find a way to get through it and get more income back into the city so we can, you know, regrow and do the things necessary to keep on going in a positive vein. So that's kind of my view.
Okay.
And I will continue.
And you will continue. And there's Kathy. I see her waving her hand. We can't see her face.
Because it's one of those crazy hair days and everything else. I've been sewing masks so that we have ones we can launder. To answer your question, Maureen, I have less energy and less time than I did when I joined this group, but I will stay in the group and do whatever I can do to support the cause and the efforts. I'm concerned about a nonprofit in town who has a facility, and the cancellation of our events to raise funds, the question about what the city is able to contribute based on the history of what it was contributing, and the need for, you know, what we've had and even more is a concern. So, you know, that's where I'm at, and I realize that the city funding is in a tough place right now, and like Brian said, we're just going to have to work through it. So
Yeah.
that's.
Thank you, Kathy.
Mhm.
I see John Horner raising his hand. John?
Hi, everybody. It's good to see you. I tried the digital hand, but I guess we're doing the physical one, which I appreciate. So I'm happy to continue participating. I think if we're going to do that, we really need to completely reset and rethink our purpose and objectives. My personal opinion is that the chance of any kind of a tax measure passing on the ballot this November is so close to zero, it's not worth talking about. Others may disagree, but I don't, looking at what just happened in the last local election and now this economic situation, getting a majority or super majority of people to say, yeah, more taxes is good, seems extraordinarily unlikely. It's just one person's educated opinion. And I think, as at every level, certainly for our business, I'm going to sign off here soon because after 2 weeks of waiting, I just got the email from Wells Fargo that said, yes, you can now apply for a PPP loan. So I'm going to have to go jump on that after 2 weeks of waiting, but it's really time to focus on what's essential and what's nice to have. And there's a whole lot of nice to haves that are going to have to go on ice for some long period of time. And that just seems unavoidable to me. And I hope if others disagree, think, in 6 weeks it's back to normal, the money's going to come flowing in. God bless. I'd love to see that happen. I don't see how that happens. Unprecedented is a word that's getting worn out, but it really is. It really is true. We're through the looking glass here, and we're going to have to go back on our best character and our best learning ability and everything else. But everything we thought we knew, most of it's wrong now. So this is going to be a group keep, kind of talking about how, as a community, do we deal with this new reality? I'm happy to be part of that conversation. If this is, let's just keep plowing forward to a November tax measure of some kind, I won't oppose it. I'll say God bless you, but I'm out. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, thank you, John. That's honest and appreciated. As I said in the email that I sent out, from a city perspective, obviously nothing is finalized or done. We're putting forward the recommended budget. But I would say that probably the general consensus on the city end is that this is probably not going to be a good time to try and move forward with a ballot measure, a revenue measure, even though, as we all realize, we're going to need revenue more than ever. But anyway, so I think that that's part of this tonight, is just having a touch base of where everybody is in relation to that. We're not going to go into nitty-gritty details about whether we're going to do that or not, but I appreciate your frank, honest answer, John. When we get together on the 25th for our regular meeting, that's the point where we need to, make some definite decisions about what's going forward. Oh, our city manager, Christina, raised her hand.
I just want to make a couple remarks just on the financial side of things. It's so great to see everybody. I feel like this is a good educational update, hearing from all of you, but I also feel like it's a counseling session too, hearing some of your words. So thank you. Tomorrow at the council meeting during my report, I am going to provide a summary of our first take on the financial impact that we project at this time. And so tomorrow I'll be supplementing a memo. And the first look is, it is very significant, the drop in revenues that we're anticipating for sales tax, for transient occupancy tax, for recreation revenue, development revenue, and then we'll also see increased expenditures as well. And so we'll have it plotted out by this current year and the next couple of years. We don't think it's going to quickly rebound. And so we have a large challenge ahead. So we are bringing forward the recommended budget next week, but we will be making changes prior to asking council to adopt the budget, as we are continuing to come up with what the recommended reductions are in service levels and projects and so forth. But we are planning to have that recommended budget out next week. Also, I want to just quick plug to encourage you. We're doing weekly town hall meetings on Thursdays at 5:30. And then we also have a economic development roundtable series. And so those are pretty valuable for, especially for small and just businesses in general. Would be good to join. We had our last one on Friday, and I believe we have our next one on Thursday. And that's it for now, but I might jump back in.
Thank you, Christina. Let's see.
Hey, this is Rick.
Rick, there. Okay, go ahead, Rick.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
So one thing I obviously see is this is a game changer on all levels, the city budget, development, et cetera. Certainly, I'll continue. So I want to be part of the process. The International Monetary Fund today said that this is going to be the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. And, personally, I think we're headed for a depression. So that's pretty daunting news. I really feel for the small businesses out there. I mean, we've got to support them in any way we can. I'm dealing with a different set of issues. We're an essential business, so we're trying to keep 400 people safe, 450 people paid, and just kind of trying to figure out all the laws that have been passed and if there's any, economic stimulus that would help us out or not. So, and just like everybody else, it's crazy, very busy times, trying to keep our heads above water.
Yeah. Thank you, Rick. And there's someone else on the phone, and it's just a phone number, so I'm not sure who it is, and I can tell that that person is muted. I don't know if Michelle, if you can see anything else. I don't think so.
No, just the phone number ending in 172.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. We haven't heard from Shakib or.
Is that on mute?
Oh, there. Is this Doug?
Yeah. About the time I dialed in, you were talking, so I didn't hear the magic codes that would unmute the phone. So I guessed.
Okay.
That was my question to you earlier, by the way. So I don't know whether I will want to continue or not. In part, it's figuring out what the city is going to tell us about what they're doing and whether, we work with that or we're supposed to sort of be an independent think tank and come up with our own ideas. I guess the one thing I want to say, I've been a little amazed that the government of this country has actually turned to letting individual parties go out and acquire equipment or build, PPE and that sort of stuff. And so, maybe the idea for us going forward is not that we look at this top down in terms of revenue for the city, but maybe the way individuals have been contributing, at a scale larger than making masks, and that is to try and figure out how we can help each other and our particular interests in the city. I'm very, because I'm one of those people who's older and was told I could not go out and participate in anything. I've been thinking a lot about, how do you stay healthy physically and mentally, and so to me, all this talk about public safety that appeared in the emails today, it's physical and mental health of our residents. It's not police and fire only. So I didn't really want to say too much. I mean, I don't like to talk without having thought about it a lot and written it down and rewritten it. I have made some suggestions of things that I'm interested in hearing about from the city and submitted them as a written comment for the council meeting tomorrow night and received an acknowledgement from Christina. So I really don't know. I don't have enough information at the moment to know whether I think I can be effective in this group going forward. But I agree with John Horner. I think the idea of people willing to tax themselves, given all the things that are happening to people's finances and other things, is really not worth considering. So that's all I wanted to say. I'll go back to being quiet now. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. We appreciate your input. Let's see. So there's Steve Tate, Nancy, Shakib, and do you want to jump in? There's
Hi.
Shakib. He unmuted. Hi.
How are you? I hope everyone's well. So first of all, yes, I'm still in, and I just hope everyone's doing well. And, just grateful that we have our health, food on the table right now. I mean, a month ago we were empty nesters. Now we have two of our children back with us. One came from Texas, and the other was in New York City for about 5 years. So we got her out about a month ago because we were seeing what was happening there. So we just convinced her again. Everyone's, Zooming for work, so she's working remotely. Puts things into perspective between wants and needs. So, we're not going out or anything, but we don't need anything. As long as we have our health and we have food on the table, what else do you need? So to answer your question, yes, I'm definitely in. I think this is much more important than it was, I hate to say, maybe a couple of months ago, but now it gets a little more interesting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Nancy?
I'll go next. Hello, everybody. I just want to say I appreciate the opportunity to meet with all of you. When this thing started, I think the number one thing that popped in my mind was to stay healthy for myself and then my parents who are in their 80s. They live in Almaden. So those were my top priorities. I am on day 2 or 3. I remember going to Nob Hill and just telling them, thank you for being here. I wasn't even sure if grocery stores would still be open. And luckily they are, because I think if we didn't have food, that would be a whole nother level. So I'm a teacher, and I've always been very, caring about people and society. And for me, I'm kind of, I know a lot of you probably have thought about this too, like, what can we learn from this experience? Let's be, maybe there's some potential for really changing the way society's priorities line up. I know we live in Silicon Valley and we're tired of the traffic and everybody's stressed. And I love seeing dads and moms on bike rides with their kids, everyone waving to each other. I just think this could be a real time to pause and reset our priorities. And I really hope that individuals, decision makers, or individual people can, establish what they feel would be priorities going forward. We don't have to fall back into the same rat race that we had before, because I think it was not healthy for individuals, families, society, the planet. I have a job. I work part-time. I'm a teacher. I do my lesson planning from home, and then I go out to the community center and run classes. So that's all on pause right now. But I have been teaching online classes for over a year, so it's been an easy transition for me. But at the same time, other teachers, and I teach meditative drawing, Zentangle, there's other teachers that are offering classes for free. So will people still pay for my classes? Will I have an income going down the road? I don't know. It's an unknown territory. And so I also am interested, I am still interested in being on this committee for sure, because I think I'm really good at talking to people and understanding people. And I'm really interested in working together. We have a very special city, but all cities are in the same boat, so we just have to figure out, I need to hear, because this is the first for me, I need to hear what's really been happening. I don't have a sense of how dire it is. So I'm interested in hearing more about that. So as I said at the beginning, I do appreciate that we're here. It shows that the city cares. And now we need to also just get that out to our residents too. Because now we're in week 5. I watched Gavin Newsom at noon today, listening to what they were saying. I thought they did a really good presentation. So we just have to keep on doing what we're doing and hope that this can come to a conclusion soon. I'm not interested in going back to, I hate the term new normal, and I'm not interested in going back to how we were. I'm really trying to be mindful of what's happening, and like I said before, maybe using it as a reset or a way to reprioritize things if possible. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Wise words. It looks like Steve Tate, you're the last person. I'm guessing you have something to say? You're muted.
How do I get unmuted?
There, now we can hear you.
Okay.
I can learn to understand you much better if I can get familiar with the way you talk. I need your permission to help.
Wow. Okay, I'm an old guy with asthma and emphysema and all that kind of stuff, so I'm pretty much confined to the house. And I have plenty of time. And I've been thinking about how best to use it. And I'm involved in a lot of volunteer kinds of things. I'm actually getting to the point where I have conflicting Zoom meetings, more meetings at the same time. But my perspective on this is similar to John's, but a little bit different. I know that people are worried about paying the rent or the mortgage. They're worried about getting food on the table. They're worried about their health, and all those things financially strap them more. And then on the other hand, I look around and see these various charities that we have in town and how people are supporting them so very well. And it's that spirit of the support that we need to keep that alive. We need to keep that going. My worst fear is that at the end of this thing, people are going to be so burnt out, they're going to lose their spirit. And we can't have that. We got to do everything we can to keep their spirits up so that coming out of this, we can use volunteer help because everybody will pitch in and be part of the solution. So, those are the kind of my thoughts. I don't think it's worthwhile doing any kind of a ballot measure. That'll just make people madder, I think. So on the other hand, you think about, well, if we don't even try, why aren't we even trying if we're in such bad straits? But if we know it's not going to work, but I'd like to go ahead with this on a basis of the city is preparing the budget and our elected leaders will wisely decide what goes into it. But there's going to be a lot of things that don't go into it. And how can we as citizens of the community pitch in and get together and make some of those things happen?
Okay, thank you, Steve. And I think we are very much hoping that this group will be willing to actively participate with this whole process of the budget, because it is going to, goodbye, Nick. Thank you so much for being with us. So yeah, that's kind of a nice segue into things that we're thinking. I mean, originally the intent was that this group would be part of the whole budget process anyway. And, that if we were going to be moving forward with a revenue measure, that it would all kind of come together. And so the recommendations for the budget, along with if there was a recommendation for a revenue measure, would kind of it would all make sense, together. Several of you have now commented that you don't believe that it's going to be the right time to go forward with a revenue measure. I don't know if we have a unanimous consensus here, but as I said before, from the city side of things, we are not thinking it looks very favorable to move forward at this point for all kinds of reasons, but definitely what is occurring now and realizing that everybody's been financially impacted in one way or another, and some quite significantly. We did have interesting lessons from the election in March and what happened there, on both the school district side and for the hotels, which is related to our hotel tax, TOT. So I guess we don't want to just the city say, we don't think we should move forward with a revenue measure and bam, that's it. I mean, we'd like to discuss it a little bit more if there's a desire to discuss it. And the intent was that could be discussed on the 25th. I sent you a chart that shows all the different types of options. There may be some different things to discuss, but I mean, what we're going to need a lot of assistance with is really talking through what services have to stay, what services we could figure out a way to provide differently or could survive without. I see Chris, he looks like he's standing up above Morgan Hill right now with his background. That was a very powerful image, Chris, looking down over the city and kind of pondering what we're gonna do. I don't know if any of Christina or Chris or Harjot or Michelle had anything they wanted to add in this moment. The idea was really just to connect with those who were willing to have kind of an informal chat, see where you're at, and just share that, yeah, we definitely are in a very different circumstance than we were. I see Caitlin's kind of going like that. Caitlin, jump in.
I'm none of the people that you named to speak, but I have a comment, and that's that coming out of the last official meeting, one thing that we talked about is the dire need for a communication plan. And even if we don't move forward, which I don't think we necessarily should, regardless, even if we were to go forward with a revenue measure in November, the idea was we think that we are getting the outcomes that we've been getting because we haven't had an effective communication strategy around city finances. And so I think that piece hasn't changed. And if anything, what Nancy said reminded me that we're going to need even more information from the city, that we have the opportunity now. This group can be involved in the communications with the city about what services are we going to cut. But then we need to try to open up the communication with the entire community and say, this is what's happening with the city because of the coronavirus. This is how you may be affected by city services. So if we start the conversation and the dialogue with citizens early so that they know what's coming down the pike, they know what kind of decisions are being made, they're going to be more likely to engage with the city council during the budget process. They're going to be more likely to engage with us when we're making some of these decisions, so that eventually when we do get to a point where we can start making up some of this revenue, we have an educated voter base going forward. So to me, in some ways, the strategy is different because maybe the outcome's a little bit different, but the thing that we need to do now is the same to me. And that's, we have to figure out creative new ways to engage the citizens of Morgan Hill about our finances. And maybe that's not today, right now, because there's so many unknowns, but soon. And then that will set us up, I think, going forward for whatever we need to do. You know, and I know that the number of people that chime in at a city council meeting is like Brian and Doug, and then one outlier. And so if we can get people engaged now, then they can help us make some of the decisions that are going to affect them as far as services are concerned. So I just wanted to put that out there, that I think we still have work to be done.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of work to be done. It was inspiring, and Christina may want to jump in. I don't know. Last week, I don't know if any of you were on the town hall meeting that we had. It was at this same time, 5:30 Thursday. We're going to continue to have it weekly for the time being. We had at one point almost 130 people on the call, and a lot of excellent questions. It ran very smoothly. People were great about, just writing their questions in and sharing comments and information. And, that's how we'll move forward with the community budget meeting this time around. And my hope is that maybe we will get a little more input to things through this forum, simply because people can be in their home and jump on. I mean, it's still always a challenge to figure out how we share budget information in a way that is meaningful and makes sense to people. When you think about the gigantic budget document we have, I mean, if it's printed, it's like, and there's so much detail and information that goes into it. And there's so many nuances to how a city's budget operates that, a lot of private businesses don't have to deal with. People in the private sector don't necessarily have to deal with. And so that is the challenge. And so how we simplify it, and not simplify it in terms of dumbing it down, but getting to the most basic information in a way that makes sense and still helps people understand the complexity of the city budget. Does that make sense? So, and it is challenging. And the other thing that will be challenging in this moment is that people have a lot of distraction in their life right now, not the same kind they might have had, you know, before all of this, but some, you know, the realities of no income or less income or trying to work with children in the background. And, you know, can we capture people's interest in the city's finances and our situation, which ultimately impacts the whole community at a time though when people are like figuring out, well, how are we going to survive? How is my family going to survive? How am I going to continue to stay where I live and feed my children or keep them educated? You know, all those things. I'm not saying anything that people don't know about. Nancy is raising her hand.
You know, it seems like food, shelter, and clothing are going to be people's priorities, just like they always have been. And the interest in the budget, even before this, was probably very small. I think I think an approach that would work was maybe put something out to the whole town, like, you know, we're all in this together, we care about you. You know, start it on a positive, and let people know about these town hall meetings. Then that will, like other people are saying too, that will get them engaged. And then at some point you can say, okay, well, you know, we've done all the lovey-dovey stuff. Now we got to get down. Our town, our city, I mean, our state, our country, you know, we're going to have to change things up. So, you know, we're trying, you know, as a city staff and city council, trying to make the best decisions, but and we're going to try to do in your interest. We're welcome to listen to what you have to say. But I think, you know, people put you guys in positions of power or decision-making authority, trusting that you would do the right things. I mean, we want to have our say, the people want to have their say, but we also need to know that if we're trying to deal with just getting food on the table, or our kids going to be able to go to school and all that stuff, the city budget is not a top priority. But yeah, if we start taking away things, so then it'll be up in arms. So we have to just communication. I mean, I know City Morgan Hill is good about that, but we just have to just do it in little pieces by piece, and then build up to the truth. But for now, I think if you have the time and energy to check in with people like you're doing for us right now, and you're doing with the town halls, is a great start. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's a big time of change right now. That's all.
Just to time check everybody, it's about 6:13 and we are going to end at 6:30. So we've got about, you know, a little over 15 minutes left. Does anybody else want to jump in? Thank you, Nancy, by the way. Appreciate those comments. Chris or Christina, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think you did a good job covering the town hall from last Thursday. What was good, it wasn't, you know, it was a two-way communication. I mean, we got information from the community that, you know, resulted in us following up on items, some of which I hadn't heard. You know, I knew that dumping was an issue, but I didn't realize it was so widespread at the grocery stores, for instance, people just dumping their gloves and their masks. And so we're on it now. You know, our code compliance person is calling the grocery stores and working a solution so that we can reduce that, so that people don't have to pick up these dirty things. And so, yeah, no, I'm looking forward to doing that weekly.
Yeah, and the 30th, April 30th, which is a Thursday, so it falls at the same time that we will be doing these town halls. That will be our community budget meeting. So we're hoping too that you all will participate in that. And I mean, and we're going to have to be a little creative even how we do that, you know, how in that, you know, this is such a different type of forum. And I mean, we can provide slideshows and share information, but I think more importantly is having the dialogue and getting the input to occur. So we've still got a couple weeks to
Yeah, and that'll be part educational. So you all have, you know, heard and seen, you know, how the budget works, but we're going to do some of that. And then we'll also focus on engaging the community and finding ways to be able to get input from the group that participates, on ideas for the budget reductions.
On our meeting on the 25th, are we going to relook at our objectives and goals and kind of reset?
That's a good idea, Steve. I think that, especially from the input that all of you are providing, that seems like that would make sense. And perhaps we don't need to spend as much time looking at revenue options if the majority of the group is like, kind of saying, yeah, we all are in agreement. It doesn't make sense to move forward with a revenue measure right now. We want to make sure everybody has the information. If there's, something that would be worth pursuing, we don't want to nix it before it's even been discussed. But yeah, I think re-looking at what would be the purpose for this group and what are we trying to accomplish makes a lot of sense. Goodbye, Caitlin. Thank you so much for being with us. So appreciate it. I see Nancy raising her hand. Unmute there.
Thank you. So my question is, could you give me a little brief synopsis of what has been happening to the city funds? I have no idea.
As far as what we're anticipating in reduction of revenues?
Sure, yes.
Oh, sure. So with the shelter in place order, our sales tax is dramatically being reduced. And so we're going to receive a fraction of it. So for the January through March timeframe, we'll receive those actual results 2 months later, so in May. And so the first quarter, there's not going to be, too much of a reduction. So it's really that second quarter that we're going to see a pretty large hit. And we don't believe that it's going to recover quickly. And we do work with HDL, and they're looking, globally at, all the different sectors, and so we have estimates on what it's going to look like for sales tax, but it's going to take quite a while to recover from that. Property tax, we're not going to see an immediate hit because it's done in arrears, and it's really going to depend upon how long this lasts. And the impact that we're going to see is by way of the Prop 8 reassessments. And so when people request from the assessor's office to have their homes reassessed, that will hit us probably 2 years out. Hotel tax, we're seeing vacancy rates at about 20%. Hotels are being only occupied at a level of about 20%. And so we're going to see a dramatic reduction in hotel revenues, and that's going to take a while to rebound. And then recreation revenues, as our facilities are not open. And Chris's team has done a really good job of getting a virtual membership online. And so people, whether they're members or not, they can go and participate virtually and continue their workouts in hopes that those that join now for this offer virtually will join us later. But nonetheless, we're going to see reductions in memberships as well as facility rentals, and then development revenue. So only some development is allowed to continue. So we're seeing a reduction in that area as well. And on the expenditure side, there's going to be several areas. One, is PERS. Our pension contributions are going to go up as the rates of return are much lower than what their anticipated rate of return or discount rate is. So those are some of the primary categories that we're going to see, and it's millions of dollars each year. And so, that's going to be added to our already large number, which was about 7 million of unbudgeted needs, everything from additional police, the staffing the third fire station, maintenance costs, road costs, and so forth. That's sort of a quick snapshot. Does that address what you were looking for, Nancy?
Thank you, Christina. There's Chris.
Hey, maybe one thing for the group to think about before getting together at the next meeting, as Maureen really talked about kind of being able to jump in on the kind of expense side, is we spent a lot of time going through really the general fund, where we spend the general fund in detail. And I think all those presentations and items are still listed on the website for the CAG. And that includes, which areas we spend for, different areas of recreation to maintenance of city services to police. So I think it'd be really good for any group members who have the opportunity to review those things, so we don't because you guys know this better than almost anyone now, because we spent, you know, the last 6 months going through each of them. So if we can come to that meeting with that already kind of reviewed, it'll help us get moving a lot quicker instead of kind of just reviewing all those different areas.
Yeah. Good point, Chris. Thank you. Anything else from anybody? Nancy?
Are you getting calls at City Hall from residents? I'm just curious what you're hearing from people. What's the top issues? I'm just curious. I mean, I can guess, but I want to hear it from you.
So Michelle, do you want to talk about the call center, Maureen, and then I can talk about some of the calls that I'm getting as well.
Yeah, Michelle? Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So we have 2 teammates that are working remotely, and they are answering daily the call center calls. They are getting calls from, you know, what services are available, what restaurants are available, whether construction should be happening, to where they can find services. I mean, really anything you can think of. We've put together a whole list and an online document with our police team so that we can make sure that we're all giving out the right and consistent information. It's pretty consistent. I don't have numbers off the top of my head about how many calls a day we're getting, but our call team folks are staying busy, and it does seem to be an appreciated and valuable resource within the community.
Yeah, I think we're getting a lot of calls about from businesses as well that are, you know, looking for assistance, wanting to know, is there any way the city can help them or what resources are out there? You know, also questions just trying to better understand what the shelter in place means. One of the things we definitely have seen is people basically calling to report either neighbors or businesses that they don't feel are following the right order, you know, aren't following the order as they understand it. So there's some follow-up going on in that. It's a whole variety of things though. I mean, people are concerned and they're looking to the government here locally, at least, to help provide answers and resources. Christina?
Yeah, so to add to that, a couple different ones. So first of all, I'm happy to report that so far youth crime is actually down compared to where it was last year. If we look at the shelter in place time so far and when we compare it to the same period last year, it is significantly down. And so I was encouraged to hear that. As far as calls outside of that, one has been on rent increases and landlords increasing rents. And so one of the things that we did is we implemented a rent freeze order, which does not allow landlords to raise rents from where they were at March 1st. And that goes into effect, that went into effect immediately last week. And then it's for 60 days after the shelter in place is lifted. And so we're having council ratify that tomorrow night. In addition to that, just kind of working with businesses, we now have allowed signs, curbside parking signs for restaurants that have takeout so that the cars that are coming to pick up the food can park right outside of the restaurants. And then just questions about businesses, you know, wondering, you know, can certain businesses reopen? Today I got a call from a senior that needs to get her dog groomed. She can't get the dog to the groomer and, you know, that sort of thing. And, you know, so we're trying to help, you know, so we looked into mobile pet grooming for her, you know, and, you know, just questions like that.
Anything else before we wrap things up here? Not seeing anybody jump. So I guess I'll just end it by saying we so appreciate all of you. And, you know, at such a difficult time, when we all have our own personal stresses that we're trying to figure out, it's so wonderful to see your willingness to participate and care about the community. And also, you know, the willingness to be flexible and shift gears and maybe take on a different role with some different goals than what we originally anticipated. You know, who could have ever imagined this is where we would be when we were gathering people together just a little over a year ago to get this all started. So I know that I very much personally appreciate you all, but I know that on behalf of the whole city, Christina, the city council, you know, we're just truly indebted to all of you, and just the willingness to continue on into this, you know, kind of unknown territory to help us make some really challenging and difficult decisions that will affect our whole community for a long time into the future. I mean, it's good to know that we've got community members who, you know, are willing to be a part of that. So Christina, I don't know if you want to say anything else in closing as well, or?
Very thankful for this group and the time that you're giving and the ideas that you bring forward. And I'm looking forward to hearing your ideas, and they're going to be well-informed ideas because you've spent the last several months learning more about the city. And so thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a safe evening. Stay healthy in all ways, mind, body, and spirit. And we'll send a follow-up email. Okay?
Thank you, Maureen.
Thanks,
you all.
everybody.
Thank you, Michelle.
Have a great evening.
All right. You as well. Take good care.
Do we need to follow up on anything, or are we good?
I think we're good.
Okay. Have a good night.
Bye.